Welcome back, Design Junkies, to Mechanical Engineering Made Simple. If the podcast brings you value, help support the show with a like, a follow, or leave a comment below. So today, we're stepping right up to the whiteboard for a true deep dive. We're looking at the absolute foundation of structural integrity. Because honestly, you could design the strongest, most elegant steel beam on the planet, but if you don't know exactly how to connect it to the next one, your entire structure is completely compromised. Here is our masterclass syllabus for today. We're going to cover why joints matter, the 3 critical modes of failure, connection efficiency, how to handle eccentric loads, and finally, a look at welded joints. Let's get right into it. Section 1. Why joints actually matter. We've got to start by grounding ourselves in reality, right? Why do we spend so much design energy on connections? Why are they the source of literally so many headaches and structural failures? Well, it boils down to this. Connections are inherently the weakest link, period. And that's because geometrical discontinuities make it nearly impossible to calculate stresses perfectly. Think about it. Whenever you drill a hole in a pristine piece of steel or add an overlap, you're interrupting the natural, smooth path of the forces. The stress bunches up. It creates hot spots. Because of these complex geometries, pure theoretical math just isn't enough. Good connection design demands a real marriage of rigorous stress analysis and hard-earned real-world experience. Moving on to Section 2, the 3 modes of failure. Okay, let's really dive into this. Let's break down the critical few failure modes of a simple connection, focusing entirely on where the math actually meets the real steel. Now, this brings us to one of the most popular questions junior engineers ask online when they start designing load-bearing connections. Why do simple lap joints fail? It seems like such a basic setup, right? 2 plates, a bolt, a load. But the physics playing out under the surface are incredibly dynamic. If you want to master mechanical design, you absolutely have to be able to answer this question in your sleep. So when you examine a simple lap joint under a tensile load, meaning both plates are being pulled in opposite directions, the components are stressed in highly complex ways. The force isn't just stretching the metal, it's actively trying to rip the connection apart at specific weak points, and this leads to 3 primary modes of failure that we have to calculate and anticipate. If you don't respect the loads, this joint is going to fail in one of 3 ways: through shearing of the fasteners, excessive bearing pressure squashing the plates or bolts, or tensile failure of the plate material itself. Let's walk through each of these as if we're standing right at the workbench, dissecting the forces one by one. First up is shearing. Imagine those 2 plates trying to slide past one another. The edges of the drilled holes act literally like a pair of heavy-duty scissors, or a guillotine, trying to slice straight through the bolt's cross-section. The bolt is just sitting there, resisting this transverse cut with its own internal shear strength. The math here boils down to a simple threshold. Failure occurs when the load, P, equals pi times d squared times tau 1, all divided by 4b. Essentially, you're calculating the exact tipping point where the physical cross-sectional area of that fastener gives way to that guillotine effect. Now, what's really fascinating is how the material behaves before it gets sliced. That brings us to our second failure mode, bearing pressure. This happens when the load aggressively pushes the hard steel of the bolt against the inside wall of the hole. If that pressure gets too immense, it crushes the material. It might squash the bolt, but more commonly, it stretches the surrounding circular hole into this warped oval shape. The carrying capacity here is all about surface area. The math shows us exactly how much crushing force the inside of that hole can take. That limit is reached when P equals PB multiplied by T and D, all divided by B. It's a calculation of contact area versus raw force, dictated by the bearing pressure limit, plate thickness, and bolt diameter. And the third mode is tensile failure. Remember those geometrical discontinuities we talked about? Well, when you drill a line of bolt holes across a plate, you're removing a significant chunk of metal. Tensile failure occurs right across this heavily stressed, reduced area. The solid steel simply tears in half across the line of the holes because, well, there just isn't enough material left to carry that tensile load. All right, Section 3, understanding connection efficiency. Now that we know exactly how these joints break down, we need a reliable metric to evaluate how well we actually designed the thing. This is how we grade our homework. Joint efficiency is simply the ratio comparing the load-carrying capacity of your joint to the ultimate tensile strength of a solid, undrilled plate of the exact same material and dimensions. It's just a percentage. Say your continuous plate can hold 100 kilonewtons, but your bolted connection fails at 50. Boom, you have a 50% joint efficiency. Your goal as an engineer is to maximize that number through clever fastener arrangement. Moving on to Section 4, dealing with eccentric loads. Let's see how this plays out in the wild. In a textbook, forces pull perfectly straight. But in the real world, forces are rarely perfectly axial. We almost always have to deal with bending moments. So how do we handle an eccentric load? That's a load offset from the center of our bolt group. It's not pulling straight through the middle, it's pushing down off to the side, acting exactly like a lever. This right here is where so many novice designs fail, simply because they only account for the direct weight and completely ignore the leverage. When a vertical load is applied to a bracket at a distance from the fasteners, it introduces two distinct problems. First, you've got the direct shearing force, the weight trying to pull the bracket straight down. But second, because of that distance, it introduces a bending moment that violently tries to rotate the entire connection right around its center of gravity. To solve this, we assume this moment induces a secondary shearing force in each individual bolt. This force acts perpendicular to the line connecting the bolt to the centroid of the bolt group. And crucially, this secondary force is directly proportional to its distance from that center. Simply put, the further away a bolt is from the center of the group, the harder it has to work to resist that twisting motion. We calculate this by finding that the force F equals K times R, which expands out to P times E divided by the sum of R squared, all multiplied by R. Once you have that secondary force, you add it as a vector to your primary downward force. Suddenly, you know exactly what the most stressed bolt in your group is actually experiencing. It gives you the true picture of that maximum localized stress. Finally, Section 5, Welded Joint Basics. Let's step away from bolts for a second and look at an alternative connection method that handles those pesky geometric discontinuities completely differently. Think about the discrete resultant load vectors on an eccentrically loaded bolt group and contrast that with a fillet weld. With bolts, the load passes point to point, heavily stressing those specific holes. But with a weld, the shearing actions are transmitted continuously along the entire fused length, right through the narrowest cross-section of the weld bead, what we call the throat. It distributes the punishment much more evenly along the entire joint. For welds under bending actions, we use a simple empirical method. The maximum shearing stress, tau, is estimated as M times R divided by J. M is the bending moment, R is the distance to the furthest point of the weld, and J is the polar second moment of area of the weld group. Just like with bolts, the material furthest from the center takes the absolute most stress, but the continuous nature of the weld throat handles that stress profile incredibly efficiently. Remember, design junkies, master the critical few, or the trivial many will master you. If you're leaving this episode with something you didn't arrive with, drop a comment. Takes you a few seconds, but it tells me this workbench is worth keeping open. So next time you look at a massive steel structure, ask yourself, are you just looking at the beams, or are you looking at the hidden math holding them all together?